B2P, P2P, F2P, freemium, and more. I'm going to tell you what these terms mean, and because they're all about how games are sold, I'm also going to quickly cover some of the pros and cons of each sales model. But more importantly, I'm going to tell you how you can get the most value for your entertainment dollar. But before I get started, I just want to let you know that this is part of a series where I explain some common game lingo with the intention of helping people who want to learn more about gaming. So if that's you, be sure to check out the playlist as well. Now I'm going to cover these terms fairly quickly, but I want you to be thinking about which model appeals to you most, or which you like the least, because that'll be important for the advice that I give you later. So let's start with B2P, which means buy to play. This is the traditional way that games are sold. Everyone knows this model. You just buy the game and you play it as long as you own it. The biggest pro with this model is that there aren't any extra costs. You pretty much know exactly what you're buying and can play the game as much as you want without any other costs or considerations. So if the game is fun to play over and over again and you enjoy it for a long time, that can represent a great entertainment value. But a lot of games are designed to be experienced once or just lose their appeal after you've played them a bunch. Aside from that, the biggest con with this model is that the developer has no interest in long-term support and maintenance other than what's needed to keep up a decent reputation. Of course, just like films and books, if the game is popular enough, they'll create a sequel to continue the story and release a new game for you to buy. Actually, some games have the ability to download additional content after the game was released. This is called DLC, which stands for downloadable content. DLC can sometimes be used for free promotional items to help bump player engagement, but more typically, it's used to sell additional content or expansion packs. Now, this all works well for traditional games, but modern multiplayer games with special server infrastructure are a special breed of game entirely. With these games, the buy-to-play model doesn't work very well because there are costs associated with keeping the game servers running as the player population changes and new game content is introduced. So most of these games are P2P, which means pay to play. This is a subscription model where you pay for access to a game. Aside from modern multiplayer features, when done well, the biggest pro with this model is that the game is constantly improved and new content is always being added to keep players engaged and happy. The biggest con with this model is that it can be more expensive and your money is locked into that one game experience. But if you're okay with that, the game developer is also more motivated to earn your subscription money because you can leave at any time. Speaking of leaving at any time, that brings us to the F2P or free-to-play model, where the game is free to play. But is it really free to play? I mean, good games take time and money to create, and the developers create them for profit. So most free games are monetized in one way or another. Ads are the most obvious way free games are monetized, but most are also some form of a freemium game. Freemium games are free initially, but then as you progress, the premium content requires payment. Depending on how this is implemented, you might also hear the term paywall, which means there is a wall blocking access to certain features unless you pay. It's also common for free games to provide overpowered items to those who are willing to pay for them. This is where you might hear the term P2W or pay to win. If players can pay for features that offer significant advantage over free players, it puts pressure on everyone to spend money in the game if they want to remain competitive. And there's a word for players who spend a lot of money on a game. They're called whales. And game developers often try to design games to encourage this behavior for obvious reasons. Once you get your head around this, you'll also realize that most free games purposely design problems in the game so they can sell you the solutions to those problems. So obviously, there are a lot of cons associated with free games. The only real pro is that they require no cost up front. But freemium can be a good way to let you play for free long enough to figure out if you're enjoying a game before spending any money on it. Also, some free games are perfectly fine if they're well balanced and if you have enough self-control to avoid the temptations that they have designed to take your money. So to recap, the most common terms you'll hear are buy to play, which are purchases, pay to play, which are subscriptions, and free to play, which are almost never actually free. Of course, the industry is always evolving, and some developers are trying hybrid models also. For example, Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Now, EA Play, and Ubisoft Plus all offer subscriptions to play games from their library of buy-to-play games. In this model, you're playing buy-to-play games, but your license is only valid while you have an active subscription. The developers don't have the incentive they would with a pay-to-play game, but you get a lot more entertainment value for your money. Which reminds me, let's talk about how you can get the best value value for your money. Remember, I asked you to be thinking about which of these models appeals to you most or which you like the least. That's important for the advice that I'm about to give you. If you're a casual adult gamer with limited free time, buy-to-play or maybe the new library subscription is going to be your best bet because you own the content and can enjoy it at whatever pace works for you. On the other hand, if you enjoy being part of an immersive, multiplayer world and have time to dedicate to an online community like that, the pay-to-play model is difficult to avoid. So make sure it's a game you really enjoy and get out if the developers are not meeting your expectations or if the community is toxic and you're not having fun. Amazon's New World is actually an interesting side story here because it starts as a buy-to-play game, but they definitely have infrastructure costs. So it seems like they're going to have to transition to free-to-play techniques for profit at some point. Time will tell, but players are already frustrated with the game, and I only expect that to get worse if the balance is affected even more by using free-to-play tactics. Speaking of which, you might really enjoy some free-to-play games, but please save yourself the frustration and avoid games that encourage pay-to-win behavior. Instead, look for games that are fair and balanced, even for players who are not spending any money on the game. In any case, remember that you're voting with your wallet, so please don't spend your money or waste your time on games that aren't delivering entertainment value to you. Once you've figured out what types of games you like and how you prefer to pay for them, what model works best for you, why don't you tell me in the comments? I'd really like to know. If you've enjoyed this video, also, remember that this is part of a series, so if you want to see more game lingo videos, remember to subscribe and watch the series playlist.